always forget about that, recording meetings, honestly. Yes, thank you. Hello to all the people that are joining on the recording. Yeah, so Lucy will be harvesting the questions, putting them in a Google Doc, and we'll use those to start the conversation after the two presentations. But without further ado, Mhairi, do you want to kick us off? And
Okay.
leave it in your hands for the next 20 minutes or so.
Okay. So can you see my screen?
Yep. Yep.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Abby, for inviting me to present this evening. And thanks everyone for coming along, particularly whoever it was that said that I was the reason they came to watch. So I'll start by saying just a little bit about me. So I spent most of my childhood chasing sheep around a fairly bleak hillside on the Otterburn Ranges, which you can see in the picture there. With growing grass was not our strong point. I used to pretend to be a sheepdog for my dad. I then went on to study veterinary medicine and spent 20 years in clinical practice in Scotland, England, Wales, and also further afield in Thailand, India, and Ukraine, amongst other places. I developed a real interest in epidemiology, which is how diseases spread and how to prevent this. And then I came across the concept of One Health, which wasn't a term when I was at university the first time round. So I decided to return to study to learn a little bit more about that. So today I'm going to give you just a One Health perspective on why biodiversity matters for our farming systems. So I'm sure some of you are very familiar with the term One Health, but I'll just give a quick overview of what it is all about. And so it's essentially taking a whole systems approach to health, and it recognises that there are a lot of interconnections between human, animal, and environmental health. And essentially, collaboration is key to allow dissemination of information between different scientific disciplines to be able to achieve overall planetary health. And knowledge transfer is obviously a big part of that. So biosecurity and biodiversity are, oh, sorry, I have lost my screen. Sorry, I seem to have lost my window.
Uh-oh.
Oh, here it is. Right, I found it again. Sorry. Yeah, so biosecurity and biodiversity really go hand in hand. And to explain this concept, I'm going to start by just taking a little step back and talking about microbiomes. So the most common microbiome that you will know about and will have heard of is your gut microbiome, because you have companies like Yakult telling us all about it an awful lot of the time. So we understand that in a microbiome, you have lots of beneficial microorganisms, mainly bacteria, and they have an important balance which can help not just maintain your digestive health, but also help to support your immune system, reduce inflammation, and support efficient absorption of nutrients. If it's in the correct balance, it can also prevent opportunistic infections. So by the same token, if you think about ruminants, they have a big rumen, which also requires a healthy microbiome to keep it in a proper balance to prevent illness from happening, such as bloat or ketosis or twisted stomach. Any number of things can happen. So when we talk about on-farm biodiversity, we're actually talking about a macrobiome. So macrobiome is what we can see. It's a community of plants and animals that are occupying a habitat. And so if you compare the macrobiome to a microbiome, you can see how it translates that a healthy biodiverse ecosystem with a good balance of a variety of different species has a very important role to play in maintaining an immunity against disease spread and helping to reduce the incidence of that. So prevention is better than cure, and that's been a motto of healthcare professionals for a long time. In the past, when I was at university, that included things like preventative antibiotic use, preventative anthelmintic use. These days, we realise that that's not prevention, that's treatment. And there are a lot of collaborations between farmers and vets, forming networks to reduce the use of antimicrobials in farm animals and anthelmintics as well. So One Health includes an awful lot of things, but being able to produce a healthy, balanced diet from a healthy, balanced ecosystem is one of the kind of foundations, as it were. It also includes integrated pest management, integrated parasite management, and also mental well-being as well, because that's very important. And as we all know, having a nice walk in nature, listening to birdsong, it does help to improve our mental health as well. So you thought I was here to talk about birds, so I'm going to move on to my next slide. So why should we be measuring biodiversity? So again, going back to a clinical standpoint, collecting data allows us to make informed decisions. So as a clinician, I used to take blood samples or swabs or biopsies, collect lots of information to be able to make a decision about what treatment plan we were going to have. This also translates to environmental health or ecosystem health, because if we collect enough information about that environment, then we're able to make informed decisions as to what might help to sustain it, make it more resilient, and help it to function and provide ecosystem services for us. So, excuse me. The World Economic Forum has recognised biodiversity collapse as one of the top 3 global risks. And a recent publication has predicted that that's actually going to change over the next 10 years to be the #1 most important global risk. So we know that biodiversity is very, very important for all living systems. Now, to be able to make informed decisions, we need to be able to assess it in a meaningful way. And if we are able to establish a baseline of what we have now, then we're able to look at changes and track monitoring over time to see what's changing as we make differences to the way that we're managing the land. And if we measure it, we can manage it. So I work for Chirrup, and what we do is we try to make data accessible to all farms, essentially. So passive acoustic monitoring has actually been around for decades. So it's a proven method, and it's importantly non-invasive. So by that I mean non-invasive both to the farm environment and to the wildlife that are present there. And that's particularly important because often the best time of year to be doing a breeding bird survey is also coincides with lambing time, and nobody has time to do anything else during lambing time. So this is where passive acoustic monitoring can be useful. It also gives a real-time assessment of what's happening. So when you combine it with habitat maps, then you can actually assess the health of the habitat that you have mapped. It can also have some wide coverage from where it is placed, and you can leave monitors out for multiple days or weeks to be able to collect large amounts of data. And with the advancement of AI, we can then use machine learning programs to be able to identify the sounds that we hear during those multiple days. So it can be a consistent, simple, and an auditable representation of what's happening. So why do we use birds as indicators? Well, they're very useful species. You get birds occur in virtually every ecosystem on the planet. So they're very well studied. They have been for hundreds of years. They've evolved alongside us, and you get birds occupying all of the different trophic niches. So you'll have birds who feed off insects, birds who feed off grains and seeds, birds who feed off other birds or small mammals, and having a wide variety and a diverse range of lots of different species can give you an indication of the health of the full ecosystem, because in order to be able to support a wide diversity of species, you need to have plant life and suitable nesting habitats and suitable food for them to be able to survive there. And birds also, in essence, provide ecosystem services as well. So things like seed dispersal, sometimes pollination, sometimes pest predation as well. So when we're looking at passive acoustic monitoring data and identifying what birds that are present, it's really useful to be able to categorize those species to tell us what are these species telling us about the environment. So certain species will tell us that we've got a lot of insects present. Certain species will tell us we've got good water quality. And you can actually then use this information to look at where you are doing well and where you might be able to think about making some changes as well to try and improve the variety of species in a different category. And all of this kind of underlines the need for strategic planning, because when we are making decisions about what we want to do to farm in harmony with nature or to improve the value of nature, the natural capital on our land, we want to be able to have actionable insights. We want to be able to use the information that we've got to make sure that what we're going to do is going to be beneficial. And we need to remember that sometimes even making small changes over time can actually have bigger impacts than you realize. So starting small is always the best way to do it, because certainly you can get bogged down in too much data sometimes. So it's useful to have lots and lots of data, but the risk, and I suffer from this myself as well, is are you going to decide to change something that then, if you had more information, you might have made a different decision? Well, I think as farmers, and particularly the farming community, we're really quite able to play to our strengths on this, because certainly on our farm, especially at lambing time, you would start the day with plan A. By the time you come in for breakfast, you might be on plan D. By the time you reach the end of the day, you've probably run out of alphabet, because farmers are very able to adapt and make changes and revise plans as they go, depending on what impacts they're having. So we need to be open to continually learning things, and new information can sometimes surprise us. Being open to new ideas is really important, because sometimes it can be actually lost Indigenous knowledge. When we talk about Indigenous knowledge, people often think of tribes in the Amazon or in Africa, but actually there's a lot of Indigenous knowledge in the UK that has been lost over time because of the drive to push us towards more intensive farming, which happened over the last century. But when we look back to more traditional practices, how our predecessors farmed, then actually there's a lot we can learn from those previous practices. So it's always a good idea to start with no regret actions. So actions that are always going to have a good impact, and continuing to track changes and continuing to monitor on a regular basis, either annually or biannually, to look at changes in the species makeup is a really useful way of knowing how well our plans are working. And excuse me. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope that's given a useful overview for people. And I'll pass back to Abby.
Brilliant. Thanks. Thanks so much, Mhairi. You're still full screen. There we go. That was brilliant. I really like the bit about Indigenous knowledge and sort of, learning from our ancestors and such like. If anybody's got any questions for Mhairi, do stick them in the chat. But we're just going to go straight into John's presentation. John's from SRUC, from the let me get this right, Hill and Upland Research Centre. I think that's the correct name, isn't it, John?
Nearly.
Nearly. Have been there.
Hill and Mountain Research Centre.
Oh, I went there for What's Up in the Uplands, so I've just got uplands stuck in my head. That was when I was doing my MSc and through Bangor University, and we had a kind of bit of a learning day up there about 15 years ago, I think. But yeah, so do you want to launch into your presentation and show us what
I
you've
shall.
been up to? Yeah, up at Korean Larish and how you've been using this in your practice.
No problem. Hopefully you can see the screen. Hi, everybody. So I'm John Holland. I'm a research ecologist based at SRUC's Hill and Mountain Research Centre up at Kirkton and Octotire Farms, which are near Crianlarich in Perthshire. What I'd like to do this evening is talk a little bit about digital audio devices, what they are, and how they're being used to monitor biodiversity. And then to look more specifically at how we've used these to monitor birds and bats as part of a project looking at biodiversity across a range of habitats on our farm. So these digital audio devices, or sometimes they're called passive bioacoustic recorders, are now widely used in research, ecological consultancy, and by citizen scientists to identify wildlife, in particular birds and bats, but also small mammals and invertebrates as well. As Marius said earlier on, they allow large amounts of audio data to be collected from remote locations for extended periods of time in a passive manner, so without disturbance. They can be used throughout the day and the night, and they're really simple to use and easy to deploy in the field, and they can be left out in the field for long periods of time. And they can be used for a variety of surveying and monitoring objectives. There are several devices available on the market that are specifically designed for monitoring wildlife, and these range in price from less than £100 to over £1,000. So some examples include the audio moth from Open Acoustic Devices and the song meter range from Wildlife Acoustics, but there are, as you can see, others. Some of these devices are designed to record only audible sound. Others are designed to record ultrasonic sound, so for bats and some invertebrates. And some are full spectrum loggers that can be used for both audible and ultrasonic recording. They can be configured to record at different frequencies, depending on the species group that you're interested in. And also they can be configured to switch on and off at particular times of the day and night. Another thing that you can do with them is that you can set them to cyclic recording. So that means that they record for a certain length of time and then sleep for a certain length of time. You can use the data from these digital audio devices and identify species manually. So you can listen to it and identify species. You can also use that data just simply to produce soundscapes of your environment. But most people are using analysis software to automatically identify species. And for birds, the most widely used software is an open source software called BirdNet Analyzer. And that's produced by Cornell University. Cornell University also produced the Merlin app, which I'm sure many of you have used, which rather than using large data sets and then identifying species, runs in real time. But the BirdNet Analyzer can be used to identify around about 3,000 of the world's most common species, and it includes all the species regularly found in the UK. And there is a graphical user interface, which makes it easier to configure which you can use as a user. Alternatively, there is some free software called Chirrup.ai that provides an even more user-friendly interface, and this still uses the BirdNet analyzer for the sort of background processing. For bats, a widely used piece of software for automatically identifying UK bats is a thing called Kaleidoscope Pro, which is produced by Wildlife Acoustics. But the British Trust for Ornithology also produced software called the Acoustic Pipeline software, and that can be used to identify bats, some small mammals and some invertebrates, and some bird species, but not the full UK list. There are acoustic monitoring service providers. So we've heard from Mhairi, so there's Chirrup, but there are others. So Bug and Agrisound particularly for insect monitoring. And then there are other companies that are providing a service for analyzing the audio data. So companies like Wilder Sensing. In terms of what we've done at Kirkton and Octataya, we've used these audio moths, and we've been monitoring birds and bats across a range of lowland and upland habitats. And we've been using BirdNet Analyzer to identify the birds and Kaleidoscope Pro to identify the bats. For the bird monitoring, we've been recording at various times through the year, and at each deployment, we're recording for 6 days and 6 nights. And during the spring and summer, we're recording 1 hour at night to monitor nocturnal species, and then 2.5 hours at dawn and dusk, which are the peak periods of birdsong. In autumn and winter, we set it up slightly different because the dawn and dusk are not as important at those times of year. The devices are set on a cycle to record for 30 minutes and then to sleep for 5 seconds, which breaks up the audio into usable files. We're also setting these devices for the bird monitoring to record just over the 1 to 20 kilohertz frequency band. So this is within the audible range. For the bat monitoring, we're doing similar sort of things, recording for 4 nights at each deployment during spring, summer, and autumn. And for this, we're recording over a 6-hour period from 7 o'clock through to 1 a.m. And for the bat monitoring, we've set these on a cycle to record for 10 seconds and then sleep for 5 seconds. So we're creating a lot more audio files. And for the bats, we're setting them to record over the greater than 23 kilohertz frequency, which is in the ultrasonic range. This is just a map of the farm. So it's 2,200 hectare hill farm in Perthshire. And here just shows the location of the monitoring and the different habitats in the lowland and in the upland part of the farm. So just a few slides of the habitats. Here we've got the improved grassland, lowland, woodland, and semi-improved grassland. And some of the lowland wetland habitat, where we've been monitoring. And then here's just some of the upland habitats. So extensive areas of acid grassland, areas of species-rich alpine calcareous grassland, and then large area of planted upland woodland, mainly birch, downy birch woodland. Again, here's just the upland woodland, and again the upland woodland, but slightly lower down the hill. And in all these areas, we had these digital audio devices. And then also on blanket bog, some degraded blanket bog, we were also monitoring. We used BirdNet Analyzer to analyze the sound files and to automatically identify the birds. And within BirdNet, you can set what's called a minimum confidence level. It's not a statistical confidence level, but because it does vary between species and the equipment that you used and the site and the weather can all influence it. However, we did some testing to see what was the most appropriate level to set the confidence at, and we decided that 0.8 was the best to use in our situation. In terms of the species selection, you can actually just run it through BirdNet and it'll use its whole database, but then what you end up with is lots of species that are false positives, so incorrect species. So one way to use BirdNet is to actually have a species selection based on your site location, which uses another app called eBird and uses the database from that. So that's what we did. We used that based on the site location. BirdNet, when it analyzes the audio files, it splits them up into 3-second segments, and which are then analyzed by the software. And at this 0.8 minimum confidence level, BirdNet identified 104 species in our audio files. What I then did was I looked at species that had fewer than 15 identifications, and I verified those manually. So I listened to all those birds to check whether it was correct or not. I also looked through the list of species that BirdNet had identified and looked at if there were ones which looked unusual. So, for example, there were lots of magpie identified in the data set. And surprisingly, we don't have magpie in this area. And so I listened to all those magpie sounds, and they were all sheep. So we found that sheep, cows, trains, and cars are sometimes interpreted as particular species. So I removed all the incorrect identifications from the data set, and so that was 38 species. We removed, leaving 66 species. And the highest number of species were found within our lowland wetlands and then in our semi-improved grasslands, but a lot more species in our lowlands than in our upland sites. One thing to remember, of course, is that the lowland habitats tend to be quite small, and so the audio devices are picking up birds out with those particular habitats, often picking up species associated with trees or scrub out with those habitats, whereas the upland habitats tend to be much bigger, and you're just focusing on the one habitat. Don't want you to bother really looking at this table, but this is just a list of species with the most frequently recorded species at the top. So they are wren, goldcrest, meadow pipit, oystercatcher, whinchat. And as you can see, the species on the left, the lowland, there are a lot more species recorded in the lowland habitats than the uplands. Only one species recorded in all habitats, and that was grey wagtail. I couldn't do a bioacoustics talk without a bit of bird sound. So I'm just going to play a few species. These are recordings from the audio moth, and they are at points in the recording where BirdNet says this particular species was. So you can have a listen. Cuckoo is one of the species with which it doesn't matter what confidence limit you use, BirdNet always gets it right. So even at a very low confidence limit, it will pick up cuckoo. Very distinctive, of course. Oystercatcher was one of the commonest species identified on the farm. Another species that was identified a lot, certainly in the semi-improved grassland and in the woodlands, were in the upland woodlands, was the windchat. So you've got a windchat here, but you've also got meadow pipit and cuckoo in the background. Distinctive call of the willow warbler. So with BirdNet, sometimes you're getting multiple species all at the same time, but within the 3 seconds, it's identifying one species. So here there's both this tree pipit, but there's willow warbler in the background as well. And here with the spotted flycatcher, there's all sorts going on. So there's a spotted flycatcher with the single note, but in the background there's chaffinch, there's songthrush, there's wren, there's goldcrest as well. Here we've just got wheatear on its own, apart from the sheep. So that just shows you some of the audio files, the sound that's coming from these units. It's not high quality audio, but we're not after that for the purposes of identifying species. Along with the use of the digital audio devices, I also wanted to do some sort of comparison and verification using manual point count surveys. So I carried out these point surveys, but they were just in the spring in the 2 years, and they're only 15 minutes each time. So it's a much shorter period of time. And what you do is you just record and map the species that you see and hear from a stationary location within distance bands from that point. And so from this survey, I identified 59 species, and 53 species were identified by both methods. 13 were identified by BirdNet, but not observed or heard during the point count surveys. And 6 species were identified during the point count surveys, but not identified by BirdNet at the 0.8 confidence level. They may have been identified at a lower confidence level. And these 6 species were garden warbler, wood warbler, red grouse, black grouse, house sparrow, and common crossbill. Along with the bird monitoring, as I said, we were also looking at bats. and using the audio moths to identify bats through the use of the Kaleidoscope Pro bat auto ID function. And using this, we were finding 5 species within the different habitats, with common pipistrelle and soprano pipistrelle being the most commonly identified, with the woodland having the most identifications in particular, but all the habitats having bats present, including the upland woodland, where we were finding noctules, and even on the high hills, we were getting 1 or 2 bats identified, which to me was quite a surprise. I wasn't expecting to find any bats apart from in the lowland habitats. As well as using bioacoustic monitoring, we've been looking at small mammals, but this time we've been using baited trail camera boxes to monitor these in the same habitats at the same location, and see a range of species that we were capturing using this technique. And as well as the biodiversity, we were also trying to look at the soil carbon and biomass of these habitats, along with other ecosystem services like flood mitigation, and trying to pull all this data together as part of this bigger research project. And although we started at Kirkton, we've now moved and sort of repeated the process at a neighbouring estate, which has some similar habitats, but also new ones as well. So at our other site, we've got some Caledonian pine forest and some large Sitka plantations as well, which we've been monitoring as well. So, I mean, these digital audio devices, I think, are really useful. You know, I mean, they are a cost-effective and very valuable use for research and for ecological consultancy. However, you do have to have some verification of the data if you want to use it for research or for consultancy purposes. But in general, for getting an idea of what's on your farm, I think they're really great things. Thanks very much.
Great stuff. Brilliant stuff. Thank you, John. Really interesting to hear about how that's been applied in practice. We've had some great questions coming through in the chat, which I'm pretty sure Lucy's been monitoring. Just want to sort of kick it off with a couple though, and sort of first of all to Mhairi. Just kind of wondering if you can expand a little bit on kind of how the different species that we can observe or monitor and record on our farms, what are they telling us about the health of the farm in practice? And can you give some examples of some that are kind of maybe common on some farms?
Yeah, so if you look at, for example, insectivores, then that can give you a really good indication that you've got you've got plant life that is supporting a lot of insects, and then that can be translated into what benefits that can have for your farm. So one of our clients, he has beetle banks adjacent to his crop fields, and he swears that when he's harvesting his crop adjacent to the beetle banks, he has a much higher volume, a higher yield adjacent to there compared to in the centre of the field. So that can be indicated by insectivores, the presence of insectivorous birds. Other things that can be not necessarily intuitive. So we did a study last year on an estate which it's a dairy mob grazing system. And we looked at a comparison of our bioindicator scorecard compared to soil samples and the scorecard system of the soil samples. And we found some interesting correlations. So because of the fact that it was mob grazed, then the length of the grass was longer. You're allowing it to seed. You probably had quite a diverse sward because it had all been recently planted. And we actually picked up a correlation with the number of granivore species, seed-eating species of birds. So that kind of tells us the benefit to overall farm health for the fact that you're allowing that sward to grow longer, you're allowing it to develop. And by the same token, there were also increased numbers of earthworms and a better pH. And that is also related to, obviously, the root structure having longer to grow and develop and be at various different lengths as well. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. No, really interesting. It'd be great to sort of, if there's more data on that we can access somewhere, if it's on Chirrup's website or something like that. Yeah.
I believe it is.
What are different species telling us about the habitats? And I guess a related question to John. What did I write here? Yeah, I mean, over the time that you've been doing this, and actually, I wrote down the times of day that you were doing it and how long for, but not how long you've been doing it for. But have you observed any particular impact of different management practices on fluctuations of species? And what are they, if you have them?
Yeah, I mean, not through the use of the bioacoustic monitoring as yet. I mean, so we've only been doing that for the last couple of years, really. But I mean, I've been on the farm for more than 30 years. And so over that period, we've planted sort of 300 hectares of native woodland. And the difference in terms of the biodiversity, including the birds that have appeared through planting that mountain woodland has been very noticeable. So things like the appearance of black grouse on the farm, the increase in windchat and stonechat and cuckoo and tree pipit, the willow warblers moving into that woodland, when before it was really just a mat grass hill with meadow pipits. So I've seen how things can change and do change with that sort of large scale management. And even things like through our agri-environment scheme, we've got some wetlands. And by managing those wetlands, we've been able to encourage grasshopper warbler to come onto the estate. And it's provided good habitat for snipe and other wetland birds. So yeah, often it's a long-term thing, which it has been great for me because I have been here a long time. But using these audio acoustic devices is a really good way to set up baseline and something you can do, repeat and repeat, particularly if you start changing management. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably almost everybody in this space has got Merlin on their phone, and it's always really exciting to stand in the middle of your field with your Merlin app on and get, oh, what's that?
It is.
Yeah. Although it's something I've noticed living in Dumfries and Galloway, we have a lot of red kites. Merlin does not know red kites, not
Is it
at
not?
all.
No,
No,
no.
no, never ever picks them up. But never mistake sheep for a magpie, though.
Ah, yeah. Interesting that Cornell University produced both BirdNet and Merlin, but it it appears to be two different research teams who are working on the two things, so slightly different. It's not the same database that they're using. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm.
What other questions have we got that have come through there, Lucy?
We've got a great one from Alex Lockhart here. Given the issue of shifting baselines, is there an equivalent of a seed bank when it comes to our feathered friends?
Mm.
Well,
Mary, you want to go first for that?
okay, yeah, well, that's something that we're working on, certainly. So, over the past almost 4 years now, we've collected over 13 terabytes of data, which we have stored, and we're keeping that so that we're able to reanalyze it as the AI improves and is better trained. So we are hoping to build up a big enough data set to be able to look at trends and be able to make comparisons of different farming systems. It's early stages at the moment, but we're certainly working on it, and it's quite exciting to be able to be part of that.
Yeah. John, anything to add to that?
Only I think again, moving away from sort of the audio digital devices and that sort of area. I mean, it's amazing how much data we have through organizations like the BSBI and the BTO, which have been collecting data for long periods of time, and we can see how things are changing already. So I think we shouldn't forget that having data collected by individuals, citizen scientists, is so vital. And hopefully, through the use of this technology, that'll increase, and we'll get more of that data.
Mm.
Is that an advantage, John, of using that the system you were using? Because Merlin doesn't automatically update the national records, right?
Yeah, so I mean, BirdNet doesn't. So you would rely on that information being sent in to the BTO. I mean, there is this issue of false positives. So without verification, it's difficult you can't believe the full list, and so it does really need some verification if you want to use it for research purposes or really for consultancy purposes. So for example, when we run the audio files through our system for our data at this 0.8 level, you're still getting things like little egret and puffin and ones or twos, and it's almost always either a sheep, a cow, a car, or a train. Or just a dripping of water sometimes, or the rain. But yeah.
Kingfisher is one that we've struggled with, that we seem to get a lot of kingfisher false positives. But again, we have, Murphy, who's on the call just now, he's one of our resident verifiers, and he'll listen to multiple samples of recordings to verify whether they're correct or not.
It's quite a skill.
Absolutely.
Which is why, having these services from particular companies, is great, because then that you're getting, verified data, much more trustworthy than just running it yourself without any verification.
I think Mike's got his hand up there. I think you had a few questions in the chat, didn't you, as well, Mike? So do you want to?
Yeah, I was just going to add a comment around the issues of false positives. Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand, BTO are currently not sort of using or accepting records from passive acoustic monitoring just yet in informal sort of citizen science projects. I think until some of the sort of machine learning has been improved and refined. They are planning to, I think, there is talk about in the next National Atlas, rolling out a program of passive acoustic monitoring across a sort of subset of sampling squares to sort of test it and look at its sort of utility that for what your wider citizen science projects. They've also been comparing passive acoustic monitoring data with breeding bird survey data in the national scheme to sort of see again just as a sort of a comparison and to understand how valuable and how accurate it can be for your robust survey and sampling designs. So, but I think at the moment it's not the data from passive acoustic is not being formally incorporated into citizen science projects. Although I think some of the data in the acoustic pipeline is for certain surveys, but
Yeah.
more widely not. Yeah.
I mean, that
mean,
might
yeah.
maybe think for a related question actually in relation to sort of whole farm plans and to what extent is the data from sort of audio recording devices and things like that acceptable in a sort of the biodiversity audits that we have to do through whole farm planning at the moment. Are they aligned? Are they integrated, or are they not at that point yet? Does anybody know?
Well, we have been speaking to NatureScott about being able to upload our data direct to the app. As John was saying, that you do get false positives and false negatives, so verification is an important part of that. We do give confidence ratings as to how confident the machine is that it's identified it correctly, which, like John was saying earlier, that can direct what recordings you're going to listen to and verify as well. And we always use a caveat of if we've picked up this species for a couple of days with a low confidence rating, you need to actually establish whether it is definitely there before you start making claims about it.
Yeah. Thanks. Lucy, what other questions?
Yeah, I've got two that are related. One from Laura, who's asking, can you say a bit more about which species of bird demonstrate what? And also from Duncan, which is, do you relate your bird and bat recordings to weather data? What they might be. Something you could answer together.
John, do you want to go first?
Well, I could do the second one. So we haven't done that yet, but equally we know that when we've put some of these devices out and it's rained for 5 days, that you don't get a lot of recordings. So yeah, I mean, and certainly with the bats in particular, you can see when you've got good insect nights that you're picking up a lot more than if you've got either a very wet and windy night or a very cold night. So yeah, it would be interesting to actually try and do some analysis based around that. We have all the weather data here, so it's something we could certainly look at.
Yeah. Excuse me. So the other question was around categorizing birds again, wasn't it? So as we know that birds have been studied for hundreds of years, we know an awful lot about how they've evolved, how they, different species like different conditions for nesting, they feed on different food sources, and by having a representation of a large number of insectivores, then that can tell us that there are a lot of insects in that area. Or it can tell you if you have a lot of birds that feed off soil organisms, again, then that can be an indication that your soil health is good. Obviously, interpreting that alongside soil sampling and looking at kind of earthworm counts and and other data as well. But it can be a useful indication of how the ecosystem is performing. By the same token, if you have lots of birds that like to nest in hedgerows, then that can give an indication that your hedgerows are nice and healthy and providing a good environment for those birds to nest in. And there's a lot of crossover between categories, because you will have species that live in hedgerows and eat insects, and so you'll have some species that are kind of in more than one category at the same time, as it were.
Yeah, brilliant. And we are going to have to wrap up fairly soon. And maybe got a few more, sneak a few more questions in before we do. There were quite a few in the chat, weren't there, Lucy?
Yeah, there's quite a few. I'm going to group another two that are related to software or kit. One is a question: is there any advice on the software or kit required for real-time PAM, from Mike? And then Jill's said it would be great to have equipment to be able to loan. So yeah, put those two together.
So I'm not sure on real-time PAM. I know you require wireless connection, which isn't always easy in remote locations. So yeah, I'm not sure about the availability of that sort of kit. John may be able to speak more to that one.
Yeah, I mean, equally, I don't know. I must admit, I don't know any real-time kit other than Berlin, of course, but actual real-time from acoustic devices left out in the field. No, I don't know.
I guess it would require another innovation in the technology, wouldn't it? It would be that the device had to have an internet connection, have a little
SIM card sending data.
Yeah, have a little something.
Yeah.
There is a project being run in the Pentlands at the moment, and I think it's called Soprano, and they're using, I think it's Edge AI. I don't know, don't ask me how it works, but essentially it is recording and downloading the data in real time. I don't know whether it uses Bluetooth or what, but I think the project's called Soprano, and it's being used in the Pentlands cluster that's currently being developed for the ecosystem restoration code.
Great.
Yeah.
Look out for that. So then the other question related to that Lucy, wasn't it? Was how do you get hold of the kit? So yeah.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first with that?
Well, you can visit Chirrup.ai, our website. You can find out about how you can rent the kit from us to be able to do that. We tend to work at more of a landscape level, so working with clusters or groups of farms to be able to baseline and benchmark against each other as well. So you can see how you're doing in comparison to others in your area or in your supply chain, for example.
Which is definitely worth doing. So yeah, trying to get the funding for that together to make that possible.
That would be great. Yeah, that relates to John's question, which was, is there any software options that could predict based on location and habitat what degree of bird or bat biodiversity you could or should have? So that really relates to that, I suppose, that you could find out what your neighbours have.
Yeah, I suppose so.
Is an interesting, it relates to the shifting baseline question as well, because what you could or should have, if we'd have had the data 200 years ago.
Well, yeah, it would be very different if we were listening 200 years ago. Yeah, and the shifting baseline is obviously very important, because actually that's what makes it really important to get a baseline of what's happening now, so that in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, you can see what has changed, whether it has improved or otherwise.
Or 100 years' time, indeed.
Or 100 years' time, yeah.
I think there's a caveat there in that, I guess, if we are baselining farms now with the existing technology, as technology improves, it's not, and advances, it's not going to be a direct comparison, is it? Because I guess we have to account for changing technology and ensure that the standardization in the methods and the technology we use, if it's going to be comparable. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing that we've been working on a lot over the last year is improving our AI model. And we are going to be running through all of the data that we have collected to date through our improved AI version. And so that as the technology improves, then we're able to listen to all of those recordings, and then that does make it more of a direct comparison to future recordings.
And just keep doing it as the technology gets better.
Just repeat, yeah.
Great
There was a
stuff.
question from Jonathan there, which was, how much do the Chirrup services cost? So if we were going to sort of, use as I say, a sort of cluster group getting together and doing that as a group of farms across a sort of defined geographical area, which is something Jonathan does as well. How much? Which is how
Yeah,
much
so it depends on how many farms are in the network. So we do have economies of scale. So for 10 farms, for example, it would cost approximately £800 per farm per year. Whereas if you had 30 farms, it would be below £600 per farm per year. And as you go up to more than that, then we're able to reduce the price further. But yeah, we try and use economies of scale as much as we can to make it more accessible.
Yeah, so not cheap, but also if you think about it in a sort of big picture, it's kind of worth it. Yeah. What about the audio moths, John? Where did you access those, and how much did they cost?
So the audio moths are produced by Open Acoustics, and I wouldn't say they're easily available. They build them, or certainly in the past, they built them in a way to order. So they build them in batches. People sort of put down how many they want, and they'll get them when it reaches a certain number, and then they get them built. I think they're about £80 each, plus then you've got the waterproof case as well on top of that. They aren't they are reliable to a degree. I'll leave it at that. There are others which are more reliable, but are more expensive. So it's yeah.
Well, yeah.
I had lots of problems with audio moths. So I'm not a great fan of them. I found them very temperamental, and they
can
always
be,
record on the schedule. Maybe it was just me, but I did find the next entry level device is a Song Meter Micro 2, and I think it's about 120, 130 pounds as opposed to 60, 70 pounds for the audio moth. But I found the Song Meter Micro 2 was far more reliable, and it was Bluetooth enabled. You can just easily program it with your mobile phone, which you can't do with the audio moth. But the Micro, of course, doesn't do bats. It doesn't record ultrasound.
Yeah. I see that someone's commented that these are out of reach for most of us. Even the cheap versions are looking at over £200 a pop. So we do encourage processors or people further up the supply chain to be taking responsibility, because certainly larger companies are starting to report on their upstream effects on nature. We're working with some milk processors and malting barley processors, and they're actually funding this for some of the farms in our network. And again, there are other funding streams available to be able to use this type of technology as well.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it be great for the farm cluster to own it, and it's shared, as you only needed it for a week at a time?
Pass it around. Get a few units and pass them around. Yeah, I mean, where there's a will, there's a way, and I think with projects like the Farm Cluster Connections and the ability to tap into various sources of funding, then yeah, just thinking outside the box, there's it could be possible for farmers to access devices without having to front that up themselves. So,
It relates nicely to the last question, which from Duncan is, how do you see the wider uptake of biodiversity monitoring across farms? How do we engage the unengaged?
through webinars like this.
Well, yes, knowledge exchange programs are very useful. Yeah, there are always going to be some people who push back and say that they don't see the value in it. Yeah, it's difficult. It can be difficult to engage some people, particularly when there aren't any financial incentives to be doing this. So there were certainly a number of papers published last year talking about how you can leverage passive acoustic monitoring for payments, farm payments, subsidies, whatever it is, or accreditation schemes. So yeah, it's really kind of trying to demonstrate the benefits. I described it recently as a gateway drug to somebody, because actually once farms start engaging, so we've actually worked with some farms who were sort of nominated by the people who they supply, and they see the results and they say, "Oh, I didn't realize I had those species here," and they start looking for them. And there was one farmer. He said to me, I didn't think I had wrens on my farm. And I said, well, I saw one as I was walking up the track. So you definitely have them. And it starts to engage and get people more interested in what there is in their environment. And they then start looking at other things like what plant life there is, what species of mammals they might have, and other things. So it does resonate with a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think the approach that we're taking with the sort of cluster groups in regional areas, beyond with the winter webinars, we'll be getting out on farms from sort of March right through to October in lots of different areas across the country. So there'll be plenty of farm walks happening near you, not just organised by the clusters that are part of this project, but also through our colleagues in Nature Friendly Farming Network and Pasture for Life and the others in the Scottish Agroecology Partnership. So plenty of opportunities to get out and sort of see some of this in practice in farms, on farms, but during sort of more clement weather, obviously. So and it really does inspire people to kind of like take that next step and start monitoring themselves and doing something else. And I think eventually through agri-environment schemes, but also through the enhanced greening stuff and the sort of more the tier 1 kind of whole farm plan, we're going to need to do more of this, and as you said, Mhairi, the supply chains are sort of starting to look at this as well. So yeah, and with biodiversity net gain kind of coming in Scotland any day now, pretty much. I think that the sort of the environment is there for people to learn more about how they could do this themselves and kind of relate that to their own farm practice. We do need to wrap up. So I'm just going to put unless there was anything else burning there, Lucy.
There's one thing there that's just coming from Sophie. I think her question maybe didn't come through earlier, where she's asking, are there any further insights into the future of bioacoustics in the whole farm plan biodiversity auditing? Although only habitat mapping is required at this stage, do you know if or how bioacoustic monitoring will play a role in future auditing?
So I believe it will, alongside other sampling techniques. At the moment, if you look at the ScotGov website, it does say that habitat mapping is what's required, but it does also say, kind of in small print underneath, we recommend that you assess the quality of the habitats as well, which is obviously an optional voluntary thing to do, but it is likely to become necessary to be able to claim the payment in the future.
So how far in the future, we don't know yet.
Yeah,
It's not changing very rapidly, is it?
probably depends on what happens in May as well.
Yeah, very much so. So before we finish, I'm going to put the Mentimeter link back in the chat there, and we've got two more questions that I would like you to respond to. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we'll move on to the next question. How confident do you feel now about taking the next step on this topic? Hopefully you can all see that. So quite confidence. Not many, not very confident. That's good. Oh, there's two not very confident. Managed to mess up. Sorry. One of those should say very confident. Oh well.
The dark blue, not very confident, is the very confident, I think, because you've got not very quite yet.
Yeah, that should say very confident.
They
And
both,
I've managed
they
to.
both do say not very confident.
Yes,
though.
I should have taken not. Yes. Whoops. Yeah, so read the bottom one as very confident rather than not very confident. Okay. Any more on that one? Right, bars aren't moving anymore. So one last question then. What is one action that you'll try to take? Say try because obviously lambing season's about to kick in. So take that you might not be able to take action, but if there's any actions that you feel that you can take in the next month, what might they be? Around this particular topic, obviously. You should be able to type in the books and then you'll see things popping up on the screen. Deploy and analyze a week's worth of recordings. Like that. Buy several PAM devices for our Southwest Dairy Development Centre. I'm joining in with you, whoever you are. Brilliant. Okay. There's a few more. You should be able to add to this afterwards as well. So if nothing comes to mind immediately, that's okay. Or if you're finding it tricky to use it, then do just pop it in the chat as well. That's lots of great stuff there. Thanks, guys. So I'll stop sharing now. So just remains me to say thank you ever so much. Thank you to John and to Mhairi, two really interesting presentations. I really want to get so much better at A, recording things, and B, learning birdsong. I'm so rubbish at it, honestly. It's like really, really need to get better at it. That's a sort of resolution for 2026. But it's been a fascinating evening. Thank you so much, and thank you to Lucy for monitoring the chats. Amazed I haven't had a coughing fit, so it must be getting better. Thank you to you all for coming. There are so many webinars happening between now and the end of March, organised by various different partners in the Scottish Agroecology Partnership and our farm clusters. I think tomorrow we have one on transitioning to organic, which is from the Borders Farm Cluster. I don't have a link to hand, unfortunately, but look out for that. And next week we have one on ruminant health, looking at herbal leys and livestock nutrition. So look out for the link for that as well. Yeah, jam-packed winter webinars. You could do something every evening, I think. Thank you all. Really great to see so many people here. Have a nice evening.
Aye.
Enjoy your dinner.
Cheerio. Thanks for having me.